All the stories that seem fanciful or completely unrelated to reality have been inspired by true events. Seriously, this isn't an exaggeration. Human imagination rarely manages to create such real monsters, and the case of werewolves is a good example to prove it. Throughout history, these terrifying creatures have lodged in people's minds. But in the beginning, when the first stories about these monsters began to be written, the stories were real and inspired by real people, neighbors from a country or aristocrats of the time that began to act strangely overnight and started murdering people cold-bloodedly without any explanation. Would you like to know what it is all about? Number 5. Crams. The woods have never been a pleasant place for those who know the great mysteries that can occur in them. This is what happens in the area around Crams near Ludwigslust in Germany. The inhabitants who approach the forest know that they expose themselves to a millenary and ancient danger, a monstrous beast that few dare to name. The first records of these wild beasts were reported by hunters in the area several decades ago. According to the stories, the men would go to the heart of the forest to hunt deer and all kinds of wild animals. One day, however, a monstrous creature appeared about the size of a zebra, but terribly menacing. The hunters described it as an adult wolf with unusual fur and atypical intelligence. In addition, bullets bounced off its body, and no matter how many traps were set throughout the forest, they never managed to catch it. The most curious thing related to the existence of this creature was the prestigious Feek family lived near the area. These aristocrats would leave their grounds from time to time, but mysteriously left their youngest son in the manor house, all alone. It was soon discovered that the children in the surrounding area were afraid of Freek's son, as he claimed to be able to turn into a wolf. Few believed his words until one full moon night, when they least expected it. The young Feek transformed into a bloodthirsty creature. Number 4. The Monster of Callins. As far-fetched as it may sound to you, several cases of terrible werewolves have been tried in court throughout history. This is no joke, and it's exactly what happened in the 15th century, where one of the cruelest lycanthropes in history threatened the forests of the commune of Callins. He was known as the Werewolf of Callins, and his murders were one of the most popular stories in this quiet English commune. It is said that this creature prowled the woods during the midnight hours and tore apart hunters, locals, or animals in the area. However, its murders weren't simply violent acts. The carcasses showed dismemberments, half-eaten organs, and sometimes even crushed bones and slit throats. Hunting this twilight beast was never an easy task. No one knew its behavior, and it was virtually impossible to track. However, the locals managed to catch him, and on December 14, he arrived at the Paris courthouse. It was the year 1598, and he was sentenced on the charge of murder. His conviction led him to the stake. He was burned to death for his crimes, although there wasn't a single moment in which he regretted it. Number 3. The Strange Werewolf Woman. Generally, when we think of werewolves, we almost never consider the possibility of a woman being a lycanthrope. However, there are some documented cases in history that seem to contradict this misconception. The name of one of the most intriguing and controversial werewolves in the world is Claudia Gaillard, the Werewolf of Burgundy. Her case is full of unknowns and enigmas. It's said that this aristocrat attacked her victims, who were seduced by her beauty. Although she didn't intend to arouse any apparent passion, the men followed her into a forest, and some secret admirers who spied on her nocturnal strolls turned up dead. There were more than 12 men who shared this dismal end. They were of all colors and from different social backgrounds, but they all shared the same obsession with Claudia Gaillard. However, the intriguing witch hunter, Henry Bouguet, followed her case, and after several investigations, he met some witnesses who claimed to have seen the transformation process of this woman. who still looked human, but acquired a strange body full of dark fur, a tail, and a jaw with sharp teeth. Claudia was brought to trial. The court elevated her case and she was then sentenced to torture. Of course, her case is highly controversial and it is believed that her judges sentenced her without a solid reason. Nevertheless, Claudia was burned at the stake. She never cried out or shed a single tear before her merciless tormentors. Number 2. The story of 3 strangers. How do werewolves recognize each other? This is a curious question which was on the verge of being solved in 1521. In Poligny, a commune of France, some years before, numerous wolf attacks had been recorded in the forests of the area. Several hunters had usually met their deaths trying to catch this infernal pack, but no one had managed to make any significant headway. The creatures were elusive and possessed an abnormal ability. Some survivors claimed that there were 3 large wargs who tore apart the bodies of their victims without leaving a trace. However, one night in 1521, a traveler faced these creatures when he was going back home. He was a man of war, armed and uniformed of the evil that had shaken the commune. His path led him to an area near the forest, and there he was attacked by the werewolf. According to his own testimony, he managed to wound the creature on the side. This is how he managed to survive, as the beast then fled into the forest, leaving a trail of blood. The man followed it and came upon a strange cabin. Peering through the window, he discovered a busy woman cleaning the wound of a man who was on the verge of death. That man was Michael Verdun, who was brought to court by the famous inquisitor of Besançon. In the midst of torture for his crimes, Michael gave the names of Philibert Montaud and Pierre Bourgault, his lycanthropic accomplices, and they were all condemned to death for their pacts with the devil and their innumerable misdeeds and murders. Number 1. A mysterious history. In 1692, one of the most incredible stories of the lycanthropes was recorded. It occurred in Livonia, specifically in the commune of Jungerberg, east of the Baltic Sea. There, an 80-year-old man named Matthias confessed to the sacred authorities that he was a werewolf and that he was losing the battle against the witches of hell. According to interrogations, Matthias claimed to be part of the werewolves, which were soldiers sent by God to fight the witches. These servants of the darkness prevented the growth of crops and livestock in the area every year, since everything that didn't grow would quickly go to hell. This was one of the missions of the witches. Matthias, together with the rest of the werewolves, had to recover that grain, and so for 3 nights a year, on the dates of St. Lucy, Pentecost, and St. John, the werewolves fought tirelessly to prevent the servants of the devil from triumphing over the lives of men. The judges were stunned. They couldn't believe it. Lycanthropes and all aberrations of nature were believed to be creatures sent by the devil. However, Matthias claimed that they were the hounds of God and helped mankind so that there would be abundance on earth. After much skepticism and doubt, the judges sentenced Matthias to 10 lashes for acts of idolatry and superstitious beliefs, although this man never stopped assuring that werewolves would continue to exist for all eternity. Ground Zero. In the year 1603, a wave of terror shook the southwest of France. In different communes, the same phenomena was registered. Hundreds of children disappeared every month without any explanation. There were no clues or traces. The kingdom was in a panic. However, the authorities and local men started to go on the trail of those responsible. There wasn't much data, but everything pointed to wolves, since in all these places, children had disappeared along the roads and in the woods. A witness was found a little later when Marguerite Poirier, a villager on the outskirts of St. Paul, swore that she was attacked by a wild and unnatural beast in full moonlight. Its form was that of a wolf, but it behaved like a human. The girl described it as a monster with thick, dark fur, sharp teeth, and 2 yellow eyes that knew how to track her movements in the middle of the night. Marguerite managed to escape from the beast thanks to a sharp-tipped stick as she used to defend herself while screaming for help. Witnesses saw her as she escaped from the forest, with her clothes torn and fear on her face. This potential werewolf was never caught, but the villagers continued to lose their children for several more years. Of course, these stories, which share similar endings, are only the first pages of the hundreds of archives that can be traced from the Middle Ages. Many analysts have wondered to what extent they could be true. Of course, for many it could be something impossible, but reality has shown that antiquity was much more amazing than we may think. Just join us in one of the following videos to discover what's hidden behind history books. Join us to relive the darkest past, and you'll learn what you've never been told.